Part 1, Black Root. 6 o'clock, the order. Dreadmoor slept under a sheet of moving fog. The sea beyond the cliffs whispered against iron rocks, its breath mixing with the rolling white that had hung over the town for 3 years. It wasn't weather anymore. It was alive. Ronan Delaney sat on the steps of his bus depot, cigarette trembling between his fingers, watching the fog crawl along the streetlights like it was sniffing for survivors. The rusted buses lined up before him looked like stranded ships. Above their cracked windshields, the words school service were ghostly and meaningless now. The radio on his knee hissed. Then a voice, male, official, too calm. Driver Delaney. Report to Council Hall immediately. Black Root is active. Repeat, Black Root is active. He dropped the cigarette. The ember fled, hissed out in the damp. Black Root. They'd warned it was only for the end. When the fog reached the church bells. When the children in the safe zone started whispering at night. When even God stopped answering. He knew what it meant, the last retrieval. Ronan rose, joints aching, and pulled on his faded marine jacket. The inside still smelled faintly of oil and gunmetal. He checked his sidearm, standard issue SIG Sauer, 15 rounds left. He'd carried it since Belfast burned. Bracken, no, that was another lifetime. Now he had the bus. The Reaper. He started it with a cough of black exhaust, gears grinding against age. The sound tore through the silence of Dreadmoor. From every cracked window and boarded door, shadows stirred. The Vale didn't like engines, it listened. The radio crackled again. A woman's voice this time, low and Irish, trembling slightly. Ro, it's Vaughn. Just don't take it. They'll tell you lies. The antidote's fake. They want the kids for the alpha. He froze mid-tone, staring at the receiver. Siobhan? Where the hell are you? On the cliffs. East side. If you start the route, you won't come back. The transmission cut off. Static. Then silence. 6:20, the council's bargain. The council hall was an old parish building turned bunker, its stained glass replaced with sheet metal, its altar now a podium draped with hazard tape. 6 masked figures sat behind a table, lit by a single floodlight. Their faces were pale under rebreathers, their eyes wet and distant. Ronan stood in front of them, hat in hand, his reflection split across their visors. You called the route, he said flatly. Means we're finished. The leader, a grey-haired man named Keating, leaned forward. His voice echoed inside the mask. Not yet. There's still time if you move fast. The Vale reached the lower pier an hour ago. We need those children out before 6 tomorrow. He tossed a sealed syringe case onto the table. The fluid inside was silver blue, faintly glowing. Antidote X, Keating said. Your reward. 1 dose for you. Enough to leave Dreadmoor without changing. Ronan stared at the vial. His hands ached to grab it, to feel the weight of hope, real or not. And if I refuse? Then the town dies at dawn. He almost laughed. It's already dead. Another council member spoke, voice rasping through the filter. Your marine record says you don't abandon missions, Delaney. You'll take the Reaper. 6 stops. 200 children. Deliver them to the Citadel. Do that, and the road north opens. Ronan looked at them, 6 ghosts behind glass, and thought of the message from Vaughn. Don't take it. Antidote's fake. They want the kids for the alpha. He pocketed the syringe anyway. Fine, he said. But when this is done, I'm not coming back. Keating nodded. No one ever does. 6:45, the road awakens. Fog pressed against the Reaper's windshield as Ronan steered through the empty streets. The bus engine growled like a caged animal. The inside smelled of oil, wet leather, and faint disinfectant from long-forgotten school days. Each seat had a name tag, faded but legible. Someone had written new ones in chalk, codes and numbers. Council inventory tags. Package counts, they called them. Not children. He switched the radio off. The silence inside was worse than static. Outside, Dreadmoor was collapsing in on itself. The seawall had cracked, and the tide seeped into alleys like veins of mercury. Old houses leaned toward each other, glass eyes blinded by mildew. Posters still flapped on poles, a report symptoms immediately. Don't trust the veil. He lit another cigarette, cracked the window. The fog brushed his cheek, cold and strangely soft, like breath. He pulled back fast. The first checkpoint came into view, a concrete barricade with 2 soldiers slumped beside it, rifles rusted to their hands. The fog had eaten their faces clean, leaving smooth, glassy hollows where eyes had been. Ronan stopped the bus, stepped out. His boots sank into wet ash. From behind the barricade came a faint sound, a child humming. A lullaby, Irish, old. He drew his gun. A girl appeared, maybe 8 years old, barefoot, hair plastered to her face. She held a stuffed lamb, dripping wet. Her eyes were black marbles, no whites, reflecting the fog. Ronan raised the pistol but didn't shoot. She tilted her head, smiled faintly, and whispered, "Are you the driver?" The words crawled inside his skull like worms. He stumbled back, fired once. The bullet passed through vapor, she wasn't there. The sound woke the fog. It began to move, tendrils sliding across the ground toward the bus. He jumped in, slammed the door, hit the throttle. The Reaper roared forward, wheels throwing sludge. In the rear mirror, the girl watched from the road, still smiling, still humming, as if marking the start of his route. 7 o'clock, the first stop. By the time he reached the outer zone, the fog was thick as milk. The lights from the bus barely reached 6 meters ahead. The road sign read, "A caution, Veil zone ahead." Half the letters had melted. He pulled over beside the first stop, a crumbling playground swallowed by mist. The swings creaked on their own, moved by no wind. A rusted merry-go-round spun once, then stopped. Then he saw them, 2 figures standing side by side at the curb. The twins. Cal and Fionn. They were barefoot, wearing identical school uniforms grayed with age, each holding a red lunchbox. Their heads turned toward the bus in perfect sync. Ronan's throat went dry. He opened the door. Cal. Fionn. Time to go. They didn't move. Just stared. He remembered the rules painted on the depot wall, the Fetcher's Code. Old survival habits written in black marker. Rule number 1, and no talking inside the veil. He stepped back, swallowed his instinct to call again, and gestured them aboard silently. They climbed the steps together, heads slightly tilted, eyes still on him. As they passed, the air temperature dropped. Frost spread across the windshield. Bracken's empty collar, hanging from the mirror as a charm, snapped like a whip. Cal sat by the window, Fionn opposite. They placed their lunchboxes neatly on their laps. The hum of the engine filled the silence. Then Cal opened his mouth. No words came, only a low note, like a cello played underwater. Fionn joined in. The glass began to vibrate. Ronan's ears rang. Blood trickled from his nose. He clamped his hands over his ears, teeth gritted. The sound built until it wasn't sound anymore, it was pressure. Memory. Regret. He saw flashes, Belfast flames, soldiers drowning, children calling his name in the dark. He shouted, a reflex, stop! The moment the word left his mouth, pain exploded in his head. His ears ruptured. The fog outside pulsed violently, crashing against the bus windows like waves. Then, silence. Cal and Fionn turned their gaze forward again, expressionless, their song ended. Ronan gasped, vision swimming. He understood now. Rule number 1 wasn't superstition. It was survival. He wiped the blood from his mouth and started the engine again. Behind the bus, the fog curled upward, forming a faint outline of something enormous watching from within. He didn't look back. 7:15, the second stop. The fog had teeth now. It scraped the paint off the bus in long grey streaks as Ronan pushed deeper into the veil zone. The headlights barely held their ground, forming two narrow tunnels through which the world existed for a heartbeat before dissolving again. Inside, the twins sat still, perfectly still, as if carved from ice. Their reflections flickered in the windshield, two pale ghosts watching the road through him. The sign for the second stop appeared out of the white, St. Bridget's Park. He slowed to a crawl. A wooden playground jutted out of the fog, half swallowed by vines. Beneath the swing set, a cluster of children waited. 40, maybe more. They were older, 10, 12, some teenagers, but their faces wore the same blank patience. They turned in unison as the bus squealed to a stop. Ronan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He took a breath, checked the faded paint on the dash, at the 6 feature rules, written in black marker years ago. Number 2, no touching. He pressed the door release. The hiss sounded unnaturally loud. The children filed in one by one, feet silent against the metal steps. None spoke. None blinked. The bus groaned as the seats filled. When the last one entered, a girl with braids and freckles clutching a stuffed fox, she hesitated. Her lips parted slightly. "Please," she whispered. It was almost soundless, like a memory. Ronan's throat closed. He looked down, her tag read Maeve O'Donnell, 11. Before he could answer, a taller girl behind her, Ola, the name read, grabbed Maeve's hand. The touch was gentle, almost protective. Then Maeve's expression froze. Her pupils dilated into black marbles. Her mouth fell open but no sound came. Ola's fingers began to sink into her skin, as if flesh was melting under contact. The sound was wet and slow, like fabric tearing underwater. Ronan lurched from his seat. "Hey!" The word died in his throat as Maeve's legs buckled. Ola opened her mouth impossibly wide, too wide, and swallowed. The entire bus seemed to tilt with the movement. Bones cracked like twigs. The sound of chewing filled the silence, deliberate and animal. The other children didn't react. They just turned their heads toward the window, eyes fixed outward. Ronan stumbled back into his seat, bile rising in his throat. He slammed the door control shut, trapping the fog outside. Ola sat down calmly in the aisle, wiping blood from her chin. Her expression reset to neutral. Maeve was gone. Only the stuffed fox lay where she'd stood. Ronan picked up the microphone on instinct. "This is..." He stopped. His ears began to ring. A low static built in the cabin, like the air itself was warning him. He lowered the mic slowly. Rule number 2. No touching. He dropped the microphone and started the engine. 8 o'clock, the voice of the Vale. The Reaper rumbled through the ruins of Dreadmoor's outskirts. Abandoned cars sat half-buried in silt. The fog moved differently here, more aware, like it was circling prey. Ronan kept his eyes on the cracked road lines, but they were fading fast. Each turn looked like the last. The bus radio clicked. Static. Then a voice. "Ro, you made it to the second stop." "Vaughn." He exhaled shakily. "Christ, Vaughn, where are you?" "At the Citadel. At least what's left of it." "You can't trust them, Ro. The council's infected, half of them are Valeborn now. They're using the route to feed the Alpha." He glanced at the review mirror. Dozens of motionless children stared forward. The twins' eyes reflected faint green in the dark. "Feed them how?" he asked. "You'll see. The antidote's a decoy. Real one was hidden on the outside. If you reach the Citadel before sunrise, don't hand over the bus. Burn it. Promise me." Her voice cracked, something metallic scraped over the transmission. "They'll promise you safety. They'll tell you the Alpha's asleep. But it's never asleep. It's waiting." The line went dead. Ronan stared at the fog pressing against the glass, heartbeat pounding in his throat. "Never asleep," he muttered. He eased the accelerator. The engine moaned, echoing down the empty motorway. Then he saw it. Movement in the fog, a shape the size of a building gliding parallel to the bus, silent, unseen except for moments when the headlights caught slick flesh, bone glistening under translucent mist. The Alpha. He gripped the wheel tighter. Rule 3, he said under his breath. No skipping stops. 9:10, the third stop. By the time he reached the hospital district, the fog was so dense it looked solid. The bus shuddered with every gust, the engine coughing. The sign read, Station C, Clinic Road. The third stop. Ronan slowed, wiped sweat from his brow, and peered through the fog. The ruins of an ambulance bay stretched before him. The shapes of wheelchairs, overturned gurneys, and skeletal bodies barely visible. Then, motion. A line of smaller children emerged from the mist, hand in hand. Their faces were streaked with soot. Behind them, a figure, tall, moving like a shadow underwater. Ronan's stomach turned to stone. It wasn't human. 4 meters tall, shoulders broad as doors, skin translucent like wet marble. Its head was elongated, featureless except for faint slits that opened and closed where a mouth should be. Its chest expanded and contracted with the slow rhythm of a deep breath. The veil-born Alpha. The children filed aboard silently. The creature remained still, watching, mist coiling around its form. Ronan's instinct screamed to close the doors and floor it. But rule number 3 burned in his mind, and no skipping stops. He waited until the last child boarded. Then the Alpha moved. Its arm, if it could be called that, extended, long and boneless, pressing against the bus window with a sound like ice cracking. The glass spidered instantly. The bus tilted. Screams erupted, not from the children, but from the fog itself. A chorus of inhuman cries rising and falling like a storm tide. Ronan drew his pistol, fired through the fractured window. The bullet hit the creature's chest, leaving a flash of light behind it, a burst of mist that bled blue. The Alpha recoiled, the fog around it trembling violently. Then it vanished, receded into the white, leaving silence. Ronan's hands shook. He started the engine again. The bus lurched forward. A boy near the front, no older than 9, spoke softly without turning his head. It knows you now. Ronan looked in the mirror, but the boy's lips hadn't moved. The words were inside his skull. He clenched his jaw and pressed harder on the gas. 10 o'clock, the road bleeds. For the next hour, the Reaper pushed through the densest fog Ronan had ever seen. The engine's growl was the only sound that belonged to him. Every other noise came from it, the veil shifting and whispering, replaying voices he'd buried years ago. You left them behind, Ro. You said we'd come back for the wounded. You promised. He slammed his fist against the steering wheel. Shut up! The voices faded, but the fog pulsed, mocking him. He looked at the children again. Not one of them moved. Not one blinked. The twins sat with hands clasped over their red lunchboxes. Ronan realized something, that they weren't fogged yet. Not completely. But they were connected. The veil wasn't infecting them, it was listening through them. He turned the radio on again, desperate for any sound that wasn't breathing. Static. Then, faintly, a voice, Keating's, from the council. Delaney, report. Route status. He stared at the receiver. 3 stops complete. Proceed to the next. And Delaney, do not engage the Alpha again. It's protecting you for a reason. Ronan's stomach twisted. Protecting? You'll understand at the Citadel. Then the voice changed. The static warped. Out of the noise came Evelyn's tone again, Vaughn's, but lower, broken, whispering something new. It's not a fog. It's a womb. Ronan cut the radio and gripped the wheel until his knuckles went white. The bus drove on through the mist like a coffin through water. 10:45, the 4th stop ahead. Through the grey, a dim orange glow appeared. Fire. The shape of another bus tilted across the road, windows shattered, tires melted. Painted along its side, barely legible, Black Route 02. Ronan's pulse spiked. Another fetcher had tried this route before. He slowed the Reaper beside it. A trail of footprints led from the wreck toward the fog ahead, one heavy, one light, staggered as if injured. He knew that stride. Vaughn. He killed the engine and reached for his gun. The children didn't move. The twins turned their heads slightly, following him with their eyes. Outside, the fog breathed. The fire hissed, throwing long shadows across the road. Somewhere beyond it, a voice called out faintly. "Row." His breath caught. "Vaughn?" The answer came softer, trembling. "Don't open the door. They are watching." He looked out the window. A silhouette stood in the fog, small, human, hand raised. The voice came again. "Please. Let me in." He hesitated, heart pounding. He reached for the door switch, then stopped. Blood began to drip from his nose again. Rule number 4, and no leaving the bus. He sat frozen, eyes on the silhouette. It smiled. The shape began to peel backward, its edges dissolving into white, revealing something behind it, taller, wrong. The Alpha's outline rippled into view, as if the fog itself were grinning. Ronan slammed the bus into gear, tires screeching on wet asphalt. The children swayed in silence as the Reaper plunged forward, deeper into the storm. 11:15, the road of voices. The bus screamed across the empty motorway, fog clawing at its sides like a living ocean. The sound of the engine became a heartbeat, steady and desperate. Ronan's world had narrowed to the arc of headlights cutting through grey. The dashboard flickered with dying power, the radio flashed signal lost. He risked a glance at the mirror. The children still sat unmoving, heads aligned, eyes glassy. In the faint reflection, the fog seemed to shift through them, thin ribbons of vapor seeping from nostrils, ears, the corners of mouths. The veil wasn't just around them anymore. It was inside the bus. He took his hand off the wheel, grabbed the small brass crucifix hanging beside the mirror. The chain was warm, too warm. When he looked closer, it was dripping condensation. The metal hissed like skin against frost. He dropped it. The fog whispered. "Driver." He clenched his jaw. Not listening. "Driver, open the door." He turned up the engine noise instead, accelerator to the floor. The wheels screamed against the wet asphalt, the road a blur of pale lines vanishing into nothing. From somewhere deep behind him came a new sound, a low humming that rose and fell with rhythm. The children were singing, wordless, perfectly in tune, a choir of breath and static. Ronan slammed the butt of his pistol against the dashboard. "Stop it!" They didn't. The headlights flickered. Shapes began to form in the fog ahead, buildings, skeletal and wrong, growing from the mist like coral. The bus veered left, barely missing a lamppost that bent toward it like a spine. When the road straightened again, he saw the next stop sign through the veil of fog. Stop for the Citadel Road. 11:30, the meeting. The Reaper rolled to a halt beside the wreck of another bus. Its front half was fused into the tarmac, metal melted into glass. The smell of ozone burned the air. And standing beside it, half silhouetted by the mist, was a woman. Siobhan Von Kerrigan. Her right sleeve hung empty below the elbow, torn and bloodstained. The stump was bandaged in duct tape. She carried a flare gun in her left hand, its red light carving deep shadows into her face. Ronan killed the engine and stared. "You're alive." Von gave a short laugh that broke into a cough. "Define alive." He stepped off the bus cautiously. "I heard your voice. Thought it was another trick. Not this time." She nodded toward the children through the windows. "You're carrying the entire generation of Dreadmoor in there. Half of them already gone," he said. "Ola. Maeve." Von looked at him, her eyes sharp despite exhaustion. "You remember Rule 4? He nodded. "No leaving the bus." She tilted her head. "So why are you standing out here?" Before he could answer, the fog behind her rippled. A tall shadow moved through it, slow and deliberate. The Alpha, distant, watching. Vaughn didn't turn. It follows the engine sound. It's learning your route. You stop too long, it gets closer. Ronan's hand twitched toward his gun. Then we finish the run. Drop the kids, get out. Vaughn shook her head. You still don't get it. The Citadel isn't a refuge. It's a nest. The Council's breeding them, Veilborn hybrids. That's why they wanted the children. He stared at her. You're saying that every time a fetcher finishes the Black Route, the kids don't go free. They go downstairs. You deliver them straight into the Alpha's feeding ground. Ronan's stomach turned. The antidote? Fake, she said simply. The real one's in the Alpha's blood. I saw it. When it touched me. Her voice trembled. It doesn't kill you. It changes you slow, until you start hearing the sea under your skin. Ronan exhaled, throat dry. Then why help me? Because the kids deserve better than being farmed. And you, she gave him a bitter smile, you too damn stubborn to quit. She tossed him a small object, a chip data drive wrapped in foil. Council's logs. Proof. If you make it to the broadcast tower, upload it. Let the world see what Dreadmoor did. He pocketed it. And you? She shrugged, glancing at her missing hand. Someone has to make sure this stop stays clean. She raised the flare gun toward the sky and fired. The red light bloomed, painting the fog crimson. The sound of the Alpha roared back instantly, deafening, furious. Go! Vaughn shouted. You've got 10 minutes before it's on us. Ronan hesitated. Vaughn. Don't make it mean nothing, row. He climbed back aboard, slammed the doors. As the bus accelerated, he caught one last glimpse of her through the mirror, standing in the road, flare in her teeth, one-armed and defiant. The fog closed around her, and then she was gone. 11:45, the fifth stop. The children were restless now. Their heads moved in tiny jerks, not synchronized anymore, like something inside was losing rhythm. The air smelled metallic. Ronan gripped the wheel harder. The Reaper rattled over a bridge half-eaten by rust. Beneath it, the ocean boiled faintly, patches of fog rising like breath from a wound. He saw the sign for the next stop flash by. Stop 5, Dunross Dock. He slowed, the bus groaning under its own weight. Figures waited on the pier, dozens, maybe hundreds, standing in rows, shoulder to shoulder. They were children, but wrong. Skin stretched tight over bone, eyes glowing faint amber. Silent. Ronan's pulse hammered. Rule 5, he whispered. Driver must stay. The doors hissed open. The crowd of Veilborn filed in soundlessly, filling the lower deck, then the upper. Their movements were mechanical, puppet-like. The bus filled with the smell of salt and decay. Vaughn's seat, empty beside him, seemed to watch him. He wanted to scream. To break every rule and run. Instead, he closed the doors and started the engine. 12:10, the wait. The Reaper crawled through the fog, its engine straining under the load. The upper deck was silent, full of unmoving silhouettes. Frost crept along the windows from inside this time, not out. Ronan wiped the condensation away and stared at his reflection. He didn't look like himself anymore, eyes bloodshot, skin pale, jaw clenched tight as rope. His left hand trembled. He realized the veins along his wrist were faintly grey, pulsing with something not quite blood. The veil was inside him too. He reached for the antidote vial in his pocket. It glowed faintly, promising, mocking. He thought of Vaughn's words. Fake. He shoved it back. Outside, the road bent upward toward the hill, the Citadel visible now, a fortress built on the ruins of an old abbey. Its floodlights glowed dimly through the mist like dying stars. Almost there. Then a voice echoed through the radio. Keating again. Calm. Measured. Driver Delaney, You're ahead of schedule. Well done. Ronan said nothing. Proceed to the gate. We'll decontaminate the passengers. He stared at the children, their faces pale as wax. Decontaminate, he muttered. You mean feed? The line went silent for a long moment. Then? You always were perceptive. Ronan's breath caught. You're infected. We're beyond infection, Keating said softly. We are continuity. The veil doesn't destroy, it remembers. And soon, you will too. The radio clicked off. 12:30, the sixth stop. The citadel gates loomed, steel and stone carved with warning signs. Soldiers waited along the walls, weapons raised but unmanned. Their eyes glowed faint under helmets. Ronan pulled the Reaper to a stop. The engine idled weakly, steam rising from its hood. The children sat motionless. He turned in his seat, scanning the cabin one last time. Among the passengers, a shape moved. Vaughn. Her body, or what was left of it, stood near the rear exit. Her uniform was soaked dark. Her hair hung limp. She lifted her remaining arm, and something small glinted in her palm. A vial. Not blue like the council's. Red. She met his eyes, and for an instant, her expression was human again. She mouthed two words. It's real. Then she dropped it, into his lap, and dissolved. Her body turned to mist, scattering across the floor like smoke pulled by a vacuum. Ronan looked down at the vial. Its light pulsed faintly, heartbeat red. The council's voice echoed from the gate speakers. Deliver the passengers, Delaney. Then we'll discuss your reward. He stared ahead. The citadel's doors creaked open, spilling golden light onto the fog. Beyond it, he saw movement, rows of shapes suspended in glass tubes, children floating inside like cocoons. He exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing. Rule 6, he whispered. Never leave Dreadmoor. He shifted gears. The Reaper's engine roared. And instead of entering, he turned the wheel hard right, toward the cliffs. The citadel lights flashed red. Alarms wailed. Behind him, the children began to scream. Part 2, The Six Gates of the Veil. 12:45, the impact. The world ended in metal and screaming light. When the Reaper hit the cliff edge, the sound tore the air apart, glass, bone, and steel collapsing into a single howl. For a moment, Ronan felt weightless. The bus hung suspended above the abyss, fog boiling around it like surf against rock. Then gravity remembered him. The Reaper plunged. Time slowed into snapshots, the children rising from their seats, hair floating upward, Vaughn's red vial spinning through the air, the fog pouring in like liquid, glowing faintly from within. Then black. 13:10, the awakening. He woke upside down. The bus had landed nose first against the cliff wall, half buried in rock, one wheel still spinning lazily above him. Smoke drifted through the shattered windows, mixed with mist. The world smelled of burnt oil, salt, and copper. Ronan's right ear rang so violently it was hard to breathe. His left eye refused to open. Every bone screamed, but when he tried to move, something shifted above him, a seat, half detached, hanging by a bolt. He rolled out from under it, landing hard on broken glass. His jacket was soaked through, not all of it blood. He coughed. The sound echoed strangely. When he looked up, he realized the fog had filled the entire cabin. It wasn't drifting anymore. It was alive, breathing, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Bodies floated in it, weightless, the children, suspended midair, eyes open, hair drifting. Their mouths moved in silent rhythm, forming words he couldn't hear. Ronan crawled toward the driver's seat. His left hand left streaks of blood across the floor. He reached for the red vial, it was wedged between two panels, intact, glowing faintly like a coal. He pocketed it, then froze. From the fog behind him came a whisper. Driver. He turned slowly. A boy hung upside down from the ceiling, head tilted backward at an impossible angle. His eyes were black, but his lips moved with a faint smile. "You didn't deliver us." Ronan backed away, heart pounding. "You're not real." "Not yet," the boy said, and then his body folded inward, collapsing into mist that flowed down the aisle like spilled ink. Ronan stumbled through the emergency exit, falling onto jagged rock. The cliff air outside was worse. The veil had thickened into a curtain that glowed faint green, as if lit from within. The ocean below was gone, replaced by a churning void of fog. He crawled several meters away, gasping, until his legs gave out. 13:25, the aftermath. The Reaper was burning quietly, its frame crackling. The upper deck was gone, torn clean off. The road above, the Citadel Road, was no longer visible. Just fog and light. Ronan pressed his hand to his chest. His pulse came slow and uneven. He tried standing, his left leg folded instantly. A gash ran from thigh to knee, bone deep. He tore a strip from his sleeve, wrapped it tight. The fog pressed closer, curious. He found a rock to lean against, forcing his breath to slow. Somewhere behind him, deep in the mist, he heard soft footsteps. Too light to be human. He cocked his pistol. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a voice. "Ro. Vaughn." He froze. "Vaughn?" Her figure emerged, dim, wavering, her uniform soaked. The sleeve still hung empty. She walked toward him barefoot, leaving no prints on the wet stone. "You shouldn't have turned the wheel," she said. "The Reaper wasn't meant to stop. You said to burn it. Not with them inside." Her tone was calm, too calm. He looked closer, her eyes glowed faint gold through the fog. Her voice came in two tones, overlapping, hers and something beneath it, deeper, older. "You broke the root," she said. "Now the veil breaks with you." Ronan raised his gun. "What are you?" Vaughn tilted her head, the motion slightly delayed, like a puppet on strings. "You still have the real vial." He didn't answer. "Keep it safe," she whispered. "You'll need it at Gate 1. She lifted her arm, the one she'd lost. It wasn't flesh anymore. The limb was translucent, formed from mist, veins of faint red light pulsing through it. Then she pointed past him, toward the ruins of the bus. "They are waking." Ronan turned. Inside the wreck, the children were moving again, slowly, as if the air had thickened. Their heads turned in unison toward him. Eyes like polished glass. The twins were first to step out, feet barely touching the ground. They didn't fall, they floated slightly, mist curling from their heels. "Driver," Cow said softly. "The road isn't over." Ronan fired a warning shot into the air. "Stay back." The bullet cut through the fog and vanished. No echo. No impact. The children didn't flinch. They started walking, 40 of them, silent, deliberate, forming a line between him and the Reaper's wreck. Vaughn stepped back into the fog, her outline fading. "Gate 1 is open," she said. "Follow the rules, or the veil will make new ones." Then she was gone. 13:45, Gate 1. The first gate wasn't a door. It was a sound. It began as a deep rumble underfoot, like something enormous shifting beneath the cliff. The fog vibrated, drawing patterns in the air, spirals, veins, a network of veins stretching toward the horizon. The children stopped moving. Their mouths opened, and from each came a single, low note. Together, it formed a chord that made Ronan's bones ache. The ground cracked. He fell to his knees as the rock beneath him split open, revealing a narrow passage leading downward into darkness. From inside came light, green, cold, alive. He looked back at the Reaper. The fire had died. The bus sat like a monument, windows glowing faintly from within. The fog whispered again, in dozens of voices overlapping. "Gate 1 awaits." Ronan wiped blood from his nose and limped forward. "Fine," he muttered. "If this is hell, I'll drive it too." He stepped into the fissure. The air changed instantly, colder, heavier, metallic. The walls were slick, breathing faintly. The further he went, the more it felt like walking through the throat of something sleeping. His flashlight flickered on the walls, scratched metal, embedded bones, symbols carved by hand, circles intersecting like eyes. After several meters, the tunnel widened into a chamber. It looked like an underground cathedral, arches of stone covered in vines of fog, pews made of melted glass. At the center stood a column of liquid light, swirling upward like a tornado frozen in place. Inside it floated a shape, a man's silhouette, perfectly still. Ronan approached slowly. As he drew closer, the shape resolved. It was him. Same jacket. Same scars. Same tired eyes. His reflection blinked once and smiled. "You kept driving," the reflection said. Its voice came from everywhere, vibrating through the air. "Good." Ronan's stomach tightened. "What is this?" Gate 1, the mirror. "To drive the veil, you must become part of it." The reflection raised a hand. Its skin rippled, turning to fog, then reformed. "The Alpha is not your enemy. It's your destination." Ronan stepped back. "No." "Yes," said the other him. "You already feel it, the pulse in your blood. That's not infection. That's inheritance." He drew his pistol, aimed at his double. "Stay the hell out of my head." The reflection tilted its head, still smiling. "There's no head anymore. Only root." Ronan fired. The bullet passed through light, leaving ripples. The reflection dissolved, and from its fading outline came one final whisper. "Gate 2 is waiting, driver." The light column collapsed inward, sucking fog down into the ground. The chamber trembled. Ronan stumbled back, clutching the red vial in his pocket. It was glowing brighter now, heartbeat quick. He turned toward the tunnel, half running, half limping, as the entire structure began to cave in. The fog surged upward through the cracks, chasing him like water through a drain. He burst out onto the cliffside again, gasping, coughing up blood. Behind him, the fissure sealed itself, leaving no trace it had ever been there. Only silence. Then, faintly, through the distant fog, came the sound of an engine starting. The Reaper's engine. Ronan turned. The bus, charred, broken, impossible, was upright again, headlights burning bright white through the mist. And behind the wheel sat someone. A man in a marine jacket. His jacket. The driver looked back through the windshield. And smiled. 2 p.m., the road of glass. The Reaper waited on the ruined coastal road, headlights cutting twin beams through the vapor. It was impossible, the bus had burned, crushed, fallen hundreds of feet. Yet there it stood, paint glistening wet, windows clear, engine humming like a heartbeat. Ronan circled it slowly, pistol drawn. The metal smelled clean, scrubbed of soot. When he touched the door handle, it was warm, alive warm. The driver's seat was empty. The ignition key turned itself, the engine idling with slow, patient rhythm. He stared at the dash. A single line glowed across the cracked display. Gate 2, Glass Harbor. He hesitated. "I'm not playing anymore," he said into the fog. A voice answered from nowhere, faint as a breeze. "You already are." He climbed aboard. The interior was spotless. The floor gleamed with condensation, seats neatly arranged. But something shimmered under the surface of the glass windows, faint reflections that didn't match his movements. As the door sealed behind him, the bus lurched forward on its own. The wheel turned slowly, guided by unseen hands. Outside, Dreadmoor's cliffs gave way to coastline. The fog thinned enough for him to see water, a vast harbor flooded halfway inland, its surface flat as polished mirror. The ruins of ships and cranes jutted through it like ribs. The Reaper's tires rolled across the flooded causeway. Each rotation sent ripples through the mirrored surface, distorting the reflection of the sky. Ronan realized something awful, the reflections didn't match the world above. In the mirror water, the sky was clear, stars visible, no fog. And in that other world, his bus was empty. 1425, the reflection below. The fog parted near the docks, revealing a ghost town of glass. Entire buildings, streets, and lampposts had turned transparent, as though frozen in melted ice. The Reaper's lights refracted through them, scattering colorless rainbows. Ronan stepped out into knee-deep water. The tide was still. Every step echoed like footsteps in a cathedral. The mirror beneath him showed the other Dreadmoor, alive, bustling, daylight. People walking, laughing, unmasked. He saw a child chase a ball across the street, a woman hanging laundry. And there, across the harbor, the church bell tower stood whole, sunlight gleaming on its cross. He whispered, "It's a memory." The fog answered with a whisper shaped like his own voice. "It's a choice." He turned, and froze. Vaughn stood at the edge of the pier. Her uniform was clean, hair dry, both hands intact. The bandaged stump was gone. "Vaughn," he breathed. She smiled, soft, human, heartbreakingly real. "You found gate 2. He took a step closer. "You're not the same one I saw on the road." "No," she said gently. "That one died buying you time. I'm what's left of her, the part the veil remembers." He shook his head. "You expect me to believe this is real? Does it matter?" She crouched, trailing her fingers through the water. The reflection beneath her rippled, revealing rows of glass cylinders under the surface, shapes suspended inside. Children. Hundreds of them. The harbor kept what the council couldn't hide, she said. Every failed antidote test they dumped here. The veil preserved them. Ronan felt bile rise in his throat. Preserved? Turned them into mirrors. That's how it learns. Every soul it swallows becomes another surface to reflect through. He knelt beside her, staring into the water. The faces below the surface looked peaceful, like they were sleeping. But their eyes followed him. Vaughn reached into her coat and drew something wrapped in cloth. She handed it to him. Inside lay a small glass sphere filled with the same red liquid as the vial in his pocket. The antidote was born here, she said. Not from science, from sacrifice. They bled the first veilborn until the mist itself changed color. That red is memory, Ro. Every life the fog consumed. He turned the sphere in his palm. Then this isn't a cure, she finished quietly. It's a key. To lock it, or to free it. The harbor water rippled violently. A low moan rolled through the fog, not distant, but underfoot. Vaughn stood. It's waiting. The alpha's tide. The reflection beneath them darkened, the peaceful faces turned upward, mouths opening in silent scream. Run, she said. 1440, the tide rises. The Reaper's engine screamed as he threw himself behind the wheel. Water surged over the pier, glass shards floating to the surface like ice. Vaughn climbed aboard behind him, slamming the door. Drive! The harbor exploded upward. Columns of fog shot into the air, spinning into shapes, arms, faces, half-formed bodies clawing toward the light. The Alpha's call reverberated through the water, shaking the bus to its frame. Ronan floored the accelerator. The Reaper fishtailed through flooded streets, tires throwing sheets of water. Buildings shattered like crystal as the pressure wave followed them. Vaughn held onto the rail, voice steady despite the chaos. Don't look back. It feeds on recognition. He couldn't help it, the mirror in front of the windshield caught his eyes. Behind them, the harbor had become a whirlpool of light, thousands of reflected faces spiraling into a single column. At its center, something vast and eyeless was rising. The Alpha. Vaughn shouted, It's not after you, it's after the key. He gripped the vial tighter. Then it'll have to take my hand with it. A wall of fog slammed into the bus, spinning it sideways. The Reaper tipped, slid across the glass-smooth water, and crashed through the remains of a bridge. The world inverted again, sky below, water above, and then the bus burst through the surface into the mirrored reflection. 3 p.m., the inverted harbor. Everything had flipped. The The sky overhead was now clear blue, the sun bright and painful. Dreadmoor below shimmered beneath the surface, fog swirling underfoot like smoke trapped in a bottle. Ronan stumbled out of the wreckage onto dry ground. His wounds were gone. His skin looked new. Vaughn stood beside him, untouched, her face lit by sunlight. "We crossed over," she whispered. "We are in the reflection." He blinked against the glare. "Then what's real?" "Both," she said. "Neither. The veil's been bleeding into this world for years. You just finally looked the right way." A bell tolled in the distance, St. Bridget's, whole again, ringing noon. Vaughn shaded her eyes, squinting toward the sound. "The next gate is there." The chorus. He felt the heat in his pocket, the red vial pulsing faster, the glass sphere glowing in rhythm with it. "They're connected," he said. "Yes." She smiled faintly. "Two keys, one to seal the veil, one to open it forever. You'll have to choose soon." She started walking toward the church, sunlight turning her hair to gold. He followed, but each step felt heavier. The street beneath him shimmered, shadows beneath the clear pavement mirrored his movements half a second late. His reflection grinned before he did. By the time they reached the gates of St. Bridget's, he could hear whispering behind his eyes, voices calling his name, gentle, pleading. "Driver. Deliver us. Driver, open the door." He pressed his palms to his ears. Not again. Vaughn stopped at the steps. "You hear them too?" They never stopped. She turned slowly, her face unreadable. "Then you're closer to the truth than I thought." The bell tolled again, a deeper note this time, vibrating through the air. The sun dimmed, and the clear sky above cracked, hairline fractures spidering across the blue. Through them seeped light, green, cold, breathing. Vaughn looked up. Gate 3. Ronan raised the vial, its glow answering the fissures above. "Then let's end this." The first shard of sky fell, shattering on the pavement. Where it landed, fog began to pour upward like blood from an open vein. Vaughn reached for his hand. "Remember the rule, Ro. Whatever sings your name, don't sing back." He nodded once, jaw tight. The church doors burst open on their own. Inside, the sound of children's voices rose, hundreds of them, layered, harmonic, beautiful and wrong. The chorus had begun. 1515, the Church of Echoes. The sound was alive. As Ronan crossed the threshold of St. Bridget's, the voices wrapped around him like mist-given throat, a harmony too perfect, too balanced, made of hundreds of children's tones woven into one continuous breath. The floorboards trembled in time with the song. Inside, the church glowed faintly green, sunlight filtering through fractured windows now streaked with fog instead of glass. Every pew was occupied by figures, small, unmoving, heads bowed. The air smelled of brine and candle wax. Vaughn entered behind him, her boots silent. The doors closed of their own accord, sealing the world outside in silence. Ronan's pulse matched the rhythm of the hymn. Each beat tugged at the fog in his lungs, as if the song was pulling him apart note by note. He whispered, "What is this place?" Vaughn's eyes swept the pews. Gate 3, the chorus. "The veil keeps its memories here. Every child who vanished, every fetcher who broke a rule, they sing forever." He swallowed hard. "Why bring me?" She looked at him sadly. "Because you're next." 1525, the choir. They walked down the central aisle. As they passed, each child lifted their head in unison. Faces pale, eyes hollow yet shining faintly. Mouths open, not breathing, just releasing sound. Ronan recognized some of them, a Maeve. Ola. The twins. Their gazes followed him like magnets. When he reached the altar, the singing stopped. The silence hit like pressure underwater, thick, unbearable. Then, from the organ pipes above, a new tone began, lower, slower. A voice that didn't belong to any single throat. "Driver," it said. "You broke the route." The altar cracked down the middle. mist poured upward, coiling into a column of light. Within it, something took shape, a tall figure, not human, not entirely formless. Its surface shimmered like the harbor's glass, showing reflections of Ronan's own face at different ages, a soldier, child, broken man. He aimed his pistol. "You're the Alpha." The figure tilted its head. The sound that followed wasn't speech but vibration, each word felt rather than heard. "Alpha, Omega, Driver, it's all the same road." Vaughn stepped forward. "He doesn't belong to you. He always did." The fog thickened around her, tendrils brushing her shoulders. She gasped, the color drained from her skin, leaving her translucent. Ronan lunged, pulling her back, but his hands passed through her like smoke. "Vaughn!" Her voice echoed faintly. "It's all right. Keep going. You have the keys." Then she was gone, folded gently into the fog, leaving only a red flare of light where her heart had been. Ronan fell to his knees. The Alpha's voice filled the church. "You carried our seed, Driver. The moment you entered the veil, you breathed it in. Your blood remembers the route. Your heart beats the path home." He gritted his teeth. "Then you don't need me. We are you." The column of mist exploded outward. The walls dissolved into fog. The children rose from the pews, suspended midair, their voices returning in a single ascending note that shook the rafters. Ronan pressed his palms over his ears, but the sound wasn't entering through air, it vibrated through bone. His vision blurred, color draining into white. He saw images flashing in the fog. The council, kneeling before the Alpha, eyes open and glassy. Vaughn, recording her last transmission. Himself, steering the Reaper through endless mist. The same loop, again and again. "Every driver delivers us," said the voice. "Every route ends here." 1535, the decision. Ronan forced himself upright, blood streaming from his nose. The vial in his pocket glowed fiercely, almost burning through the fabric. The red sphere pulsed in his other hand, synchronized with his heartbeat. He raised them both. "You said one locks it, one frees it. Which is which?" The fog pulsed once, slow, deliberate. "There is no difference." He laughed hoarsely. "Figures." The Alpha's form shifted, the faces within it multiplying, hundreds of reflections of him, each speaking a fraction of a word, overlapping until it became a roar. "Join the route. Become the road." He staggered toward the altar, feet sinking into the soft, mist-wet floor. The children's song changed pitch, higher, pleading. "Driver. Don't leave. Driver, stay." Their voices were beautiful, unbearable. Ronan shouted over the sound. "Rule 7. The fog froze midair, curious. He clenched both vials in his fists. Sometimes the only way to win. He slammed them together. Is to burn the board. 1540, the conflagration. The glass shattered in twin flashes, red and blue colliding into white. The explosion was silent but absolute. Light tore through the church, racing up the walls, filling every crevice. The children's bodies disintegrated into particles of light, their song breaking into a million notes that burst outward like sparks. The Alpha screamed, a deep, resonant wail that shook the stones to dust. Its body fractured, shattering into mirrored shards that fell around him like rain. Ronan stood in the storm, arms spread, eyes burning white. The light surged through him, rewriting his veins into filaments of fire. He felt everything, every child's last breath, every echo of every fetcher lost before him. The pain was infinite and merciful at once. Then it stopped. The fog receded. The air cleared. The church was gone. 1550, afterlight. He woke on the steps of St. Bridget's, surrounded by silence. The sky above was pale grey, not fog but real cloud. Seabirds circled distantly over a coastline stripped clean of mist. His left hand was gone below the wrist. His right eye burned with faint light when he blinked. He stood, unsteady, surveying Dreadmoor below. The town was still, streets empty, water calm. But there was no veil. For the first time in years, sunlight touched the ruins. He heard faint static from a broken radio lying nearby. He picked it up, twisted the dial. "Ronan Delaney, do you copy? This is Council Relay." He froze. "Survivors report clear skies. The veil is gone." "Repeat, the veil is gone." He almost laughed. "You're welcome," he whispered. Then another voice came through, softer. Familiar. "Ro? Vaughn." He turned slowly toward the sound. The horizon shimmered faintly, fog gathering again along the edges of the sea. "You didn't burn at all," her voice said gently. He stared at the water. "Guess not." The tide rolled in, carrying with it a single object, a child's lunchbox, red, bobbing on the waves. It drifted to shore and rested at his feet. The latch clicked open. Inside lay a bus key, gleaming wet. Ronan stared at it for a long time, then picked it up. A faint hum rose from the cliffs below, the distant growl of an engine starting. He smiled grimly, one eye glowing faintly red. Back to work. He slid the key into his pocket and began walking toward the sound. Part 3, a return to the route. 5:55, the sound of engines. The cliffs shuddered. A roar rolled up from below, metal, not thunder. Ronan froze halfway down the slope, breath steaming in the chill dawn. The sea was gone again, replaced by a valley of rolling vapor that pulsed with red light. Out of it crawled shapes, machines that should have died years ago, armored buses, supply trucks, rusted jeeps, all grinding up the path toward Dreadmoor. Their headlights burned like eyes. At their center rumbled a convoy painted with the insignia of the Dreadmoor Council. He tightened his grip on the rifle slung across his shoulder. "Back already, you bastards." His reflection in a puddle stared back at him, one red eye, skin marked by faint lines of light under the surface, like circuitry grown from veins. The veil hadn't left him. It had rewritten him. He chambered around and limped toward the road. 6:05, the council's procession. The first truck halted beside the burned gate of St. Bridget's. Doors opened. 6 figures stepped out, wearing the same containment suits as before, but now their masks were fused to flesh. Translucent veins ran from the respirators into their skin. Their eyes glowed faint gold behind cracked visors. Keating led them. His voice carried through the distortion of the mask, 2 tones overlapping. "Driver Delaney. You did well." The veil receded. Dreadmoor breathes again. Ronan leveled the rifle. "You're not breathing. You're leaking." The leader smiled, a wet stretch of half-melted skin. "We evolved. The veil isn't curse. It's communion. You carried its seed, we nurtured it. Then I'm your mistake." He fired. The bullet hit Keating square in the chest. The man stumbled back, laughing as grey light bled from the wound instead of blood. "Still fighting the tide," he said. "You'll understand soon. You're one of us now." Behind him, the other councillors raised their arms. Mist coiled from their sleeves, spreading like tendrils across the ground. Wherever it touched, grass withered to ash. Ronan dropped to a knee, switched to burst fire. 3 shots, 3 head hits, 1 councillor fell, face shattering like glass. The others barely slowed. The fog answered their screams. 6:12, the return of the Alpha. The valley below erupted. A column of white mist shot skyward, forming a shape enormous enough to blot out the rising sun. The Alpha had returned, not as monster, but as extension of the land itself. Its arms were clouds, its chest the harbor's hollow. Ronan stumbled backward, shielding his face from the wind. Keating's voice roared through the maelstrom. It heard the route restart. "Every echo you made led it home." The Alpha's gaze fixed on Ronan, no eyes, just twin vortices of light. He shouted over the wind, "You wanted a driver? Fine. I'll give you a ride to hell." He sprinted toward the nearest council truck, bullets slicing the fog around him. He vaulted into the cab, hot-wired the ignition, and slammed the accelerator. The truck roared forward, plowing through the fog like a battering ram. He swung it toward the Citadel's mountain road. 6:20, the run to the Citadel. The road curled up the ridge like a serpent, half-collapsed, scattered with wrecks. Behind him the Alpha climbed the valley wall, each step shaking the earth. The truck's windshield cracked under the pressure wave. Steam hissed through the vents, instruments flickered. In the passenger mirror he saw the council following on foot, bodies unraveling into vapor as they ran, half-human silhouettes streaking across the highway like torn banners. The radio burst alive, static, then Von's voice, faint and urgent. "Ro, if you can hear me, the Citadel core still holds the beacon. Burn it before they link." He gritted his teeth. "Copy that. You'll have 1 minute before it takes control again. Use what's left of you." He didn't ask what she meant by what's left. 6:35, inside the Citadel. The gates were open. No guards. The courtyard was littered with husks of soldiers turned to crystal. Ronan parked the truck sideways and grabbed the last 2 grenades from the glove box. His veins glowed brighter with each heartbeat. He limped through the archway into the Citadel's heart, the old abbey nave now filled with cables and generator coils humming faint blue. At the center stood the beacon, a tower of glass tubes filled with churning mist, pulsing in rhythm with the Alpha's steps. Voices whispered from inside it, the children's song again, distorted, crying for release. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, ignoring pain. The beacon's control panel was fused with something organic, skin stretched over metal. Keating appeared below, emerging from the fog, half his face gone, drew a lattice of light. "You can't stop it now. The veil was never disease, it's the world correcting itself." Ronan pulled the pin from the first grenade. "Then consider me a bad patch." He tossed it into the console. The explosion ripped through the hall, fire mixing with vapor. The beacon cracked from base to tip. For a heartbeat, silence. Then a roar that split the mountain. 6:42, the collapse. The Alpha struck. Its hand, if it could be called that, came down over the Citadel, fog turning solid under force. Stone shattered, towers folded inward. Ronan staggered into the open courtyard, coughing blood, one leg useless. Keating crawled from the rubble, half dissolved, laughing through a mouthful of light. "You think fire kills mist?" Ronan aimed his rifle, out of bullets. Dropped it. Pulled the red flare from his pocket instead. "No," he said. "But it shows where to hit." He threw the flare straight into Keating's chest. The man convulsed, light exploding outward, catching the other councillors like wildfire. The Alpha reeled, its massive shape flickering. Ronan looked up at it, at the miles of shifting fog that had stolen the sky, and felt something ignite inside him. His veins burned, his blood sang the same note the children once had. He screamed and leapt into the storm. 6:50, driver en route. For an instant there was no up or down, no air, no body, only motion. The fog wrapped around him, entered him, carried him higher. He saw everything, a road network beneath Dreadmoor glowing like veins, buses crawling like red cells through white tissue. Every fetcher, every mission, every lie. And at the center, the Alpha, its heart empty, waiting for a driver. He understood. He was never meant to kill it. He was meant to steer it. Ronan grasped the light forming before him, a wheel made of vapor and flame. His hands fit perfectly into its grooves. "Rule 7, he whispered. "Burn the board." The Alpha's body flared white, brighter than dawn. From miles away, survivors on the coast saw the Citadel erupt in a column of light that pierced the clouds and split the fogbank in two. The wave that followed leveled every building in Dreadmoor. Then silence. 7:10, aftermath. When the light faded, the sea returned. The cliff stood bare. Of the Citadel, nothing remained, only a crater lined with glass. In its center sat the Reaper, untouched, idling softly. The driver's seat was occupied. Ronan, skin half translucent, eyes glowing red and blue, stared at the horizon. The engine's rhythm matched his pulse. The radio crackled one final time. Von's voice, faint but calm. Route restored. He smiled, lips cracked, voice low. Next stop, everywhere. The Reaper's headlights flared. The bus rolled forward into the mistless morning, tires whispering over wet asphalt until both sound and shadow disappeared into sunlight. 7:15, impact zone. The world was already burning when Ronan hit the ground running. The Citadel's perimeter walls were gone, swallowed by mist and fire. What remained of the Council's forces, half-human soldiers in cracked respirators, poured automatic fire into the fog, screaming prayers that melted on their tongues. Ronan charged through them like a bullet. His veins glowed beneath torn skin, light pulsed with every heartbeat. The Reaper roared behind him, driverless, plowing through wreckage, headlights cutting through the smoke. Target the engine, someone shouted. That's no engine. Too late. The bus slammed into the gatehouse, detonating its fuel. A tower of white fire lifted through the mist, blinding. Ronan dived behind a wrecked jeep as shards of metal rained down. He came up firing, short bursts, measured, marine precise. Each round tore through shapes that used to be men. The fog inside them burst in sprays of phosphorescent vapor. The air stank of ozone and burning flesh. He switched magazines, breath ragged, and shouted into the smoke, "Keating! Come on out, you bastard!" The answer was a roar, not human. 7:17, the Alpha descends. The sky folded inward. From it dropped the Alpha, its form condensed now, leaner, faster, threads of white and red light streaming off it like ribbons. When it struck the ground, the shockwave flattened everything within 50 meters. Soldiers went airborne, shredded midair. The fog turned solid where it touched them, crystallizing limbs mid-motion. Ronan hit the dirt, rolled, came up firing. His bullets left trails of burning light through the mist, cutting holes in the creature's torso that sealed almost instantly. The Alpha turned its faceless head toward him. Its voice hit like a hammer to the skull. "Driver. Deliver." He spat blood, grinning. Already on the route. He sprinted toward the collapsed courtyard, sliding behind a fallen column. The Reaper's wreck burned nearby, engine still throbbing, as if waiting for orders. Inside his skull, the pulse of the veil synchronized to the rhythm of the engine. 7:20, the fog wore. The first wave hit. Dozens of half-transformed soldiers surged from the shadows, screaming through split visors, rifles fused into arms. Their movements were jerky, puppet-like. The fog moved with them, shaping itself into claws, spears, tendrils. Ronan fired point-blank, the recoil slamming through shattered ribs. When the magazine emptied, he switched to the bayonet, cutting through vapor and bone. Blood and mist mixed into silver rain. He fought like a machine. Each strike perfect, economical, unhesitating. The glow in his veins intensified until his skin was a map of red lightning. The soldiers fell. The fog filled their places. He backed toward the inner sanctum, an elevator shaft leading down to the Citadel's heart. "Rule 6, he muttered. "Never leave Dreadmoor. Guess I'm already dead." He dropped the last grenade down the shaft. The explosion tore the floor apart, revealing a glowing abyss below. The beacon core, cracked open, spilling energy like blood. The Alpha screamed. 7:25, descent. Ronan jumped. He fell through smoke and light, heat burning away the last of his uniform. The air around him felt thick, almost liquid. When he landed, the shock should have killed him, but the veil caught him, absorbing the impact like a lung inhaling. He stood in the heart of the Citadel. The beacon core pulsed before him, a massive sphere of glass and sinew. Inside, shapes twisted, children's silhouettes, eyes glowing faint. At its base, Keating waited. Half his body was gone, replaced by mist. The rest was stretched thin, veins glowing, bones visible under translucent skin. "You finished the route, driver," he said, voice echoing in two pitches. "Now join the route." Ronan raised his rifle. "You first." Keating smiled. "You think bullets matter anymore?" He gestured, and the fog inside the core responded, faces pressing against the glass, hundreds of them, whispering driver, driver, driver. Ronan's head filled with noise. He fired anyway. The bullet punched through Keating's skull and exited in a burst of white vapor. The man didn't fall. He simply evaporated, voice still speaking through the fog. We're not enemies. You are the bridge. Without you, the road collapses. Ronan stepped closer to the beacon. The glass reflected him in 1,000 fragments. Each reflection smiled back with a different expression: rage, fear, joy, surrender. He pressed his palm to the surface. The glass was warm, beating like a heart. Let's drive, he whispered. 7:28, the merge. The beacon opened like an eye. A flood of light engulfed him, dragging him upward into weightlessness. His lungs filled with mist instead of air. His blood boiled, then cooled. He saw Dreadmoor from above, the entire coastline alive with movement, fog pouring from every crack, every sewer vent, every corpse. He saw the Alpha collapse, its body folding inward until it became a single swirling storm at the city's core. And he was inside it. The wheel appeared again, glowing in front of him, floating in the void. His hands locked around it. The fog obeyed. He turned it once, hard. The entire horizon shifted. Streets bent, buildings folded, rivers reversed flow. The world became a road, an endless, circular highway of mist and fire. At its center burned the citadel, now a beacon visible from space. 7:33, the storm. From the coast, survivors watched in awe and horror as the fog rolled outward in perfect spirals, each ring pulsing like breath. Lightning tore the sky open, and within it they saw shapes moving, buses, cars, convoys driving through clouds of light, each with a glowing figure at the wheel. The veil wasn't dying. It was reorganizing. In the storm's eye, Ronan saw Von's face flicker beside him, smiling faintly through static. You found the road, she said. He nodded, teeth gritted. Help me steer it. She placed her hand over his. Their fingers merged into light. Together, they turned the wheel again. 7:40, burned the board. The fog turned to flame. Every route collapsed inward, converging on the citadel. The beacon's core shattered, releasing a shockwave that vaporized everything for miles. Ronan screamed, not in pain but fury, and forced the wheel one final time. The shockwave reversed, imploding instead of expanding. The fog was sucked back into the heart of the citadel, folding space like paper, compressing it into a single blinding point. Von's voice whispered beside him, almost tender. Rule 7, row. He smiled through tears and blood. Burn it all. Light consumed everything. 8 o'clock, silence. The sea returned again. Dreadmoor was gone, only coastline and broken cliffs remained. At the center of the crater sat a single bus, melted into glass. Inside, a driver's skeleton still gripped the wheel. But the eye sockets glowed faint red, faint blue. The engine turned once, twice, then caught. Its reflection stretched across the glassy crater and down into the fog that still lingered beneath the surface. And somewhere far below, a chorus of children's voices began again, soft, steady, familiar. Driver. The road awaits. 8:05, the last route. Light fell like rain. Every surface of the world shimmered, breaking apart into thin sheets of reflection that flooded upward. The ocean turned to glass, the sky rippled like water. Somewhere inside the expanding sphere of brilliance, Ronan Delaney still held the wheel. He could no longer feel his body. Every nerve had dissolved into current. The wheel beneath his hands wasn't metal anymore, it was orbit, gravity, memory. Every turn reshaped continents. Every breath redrew coastlines. He saw flashes of what remained below, a Dreadmoor erased, the citadel a scar of molten glass, survivors on the distant hills, staring in silence as the horizon folded inward. The world was being rewritten into one unbroken road. 8:10, memory engine. Sound vanished. In its place came a rhythm, slow, infinite, like the pulse of the earth itself. Each beat brought with it a memory not his own. Maeve laughing on the bus. Vaughn loading her rifle. Keating praying as the fog reached his lungs. He tried to hold them, but they slipped through his fingers like light through water. The veil spoke, not in words, but in impressions, an endless highway beneath an endless sky, engines humming like a heartbeat, headlights stretching forever ahead. We remember through motion, the voice said inside him. The world stops, it dies. The driver drives, it lives. He wanted to scream, but his lungs were fogged now. 8:15, the dead convoy. Dark shapes formed along the horizon, vehicles made of mist and memory. Old buses, ambulances, trucks, convoys from every lost city. Each rolled silently across the burning water, headlights glowing. Ronan's heart lurched. Inside every cab sat a driver, dozens, hundreds, faces half real, half remembered. Fetchers who'd vanished on other routes. Some saluted as they passed him, others stared ahead, hollow. He realized what they were. Every soul that ever entered the Vale becomes a vehicle on the road. The revelation hit like cold steel. There was no heaven, no hell, only transit. You kept your promise, driver, whispered Vaughn's voice through the static. You burned the board. But the fire became the map. He looked around for her and saw her reflection in the fog beside him, smiling, eyes hollow. Her hand touched his cheek, but it felt like wind. You don't stop now, she said. You steer until there's nothing left to steer. 8:20, the birth of the Alpha. From the shattered horizon, something vast began to rise, an echo of the Alpha, rebuilt from flame and glass. Its form was no longer monstrous but divine, a titan sculpted from light, veins of red lightning running through translucent flesh. Ronan understood, it wasn't coming for him. It was coming from him. The Alpha opened its chest, and inside was the same will he held, mirrored. Their movements synchronized perfectly. When he turned, it turned. When he breathed, the world exhaled. He had become its heart. Driver, the voice said inside every nerve. Deliver the sun. He looked upward, and realized the sky was falling. The real sun dimmed behind a new one forming from the collision of mist and fire. A second sunrise, colder, hung above the earth. 8:30, collapse. Gravity broke first. The sea lifted in slow motion, rising into columns that froze midair. The land cracked, rolling inward like parchment curling in flame. Ronan gripped the wheel tighter. End it, he whispered. Just end it. But the veil wasn't listening. It was driving itself now, guided by the momentum of every lost soul. He saw humanity scatter like sparks, cities swallowed, mountains dissolving into vapor. The new sun reflected off everything, multiplying until the planet looked like one endless mirror. Then the wheel in his hands dissolved. His body followed. 8:40, integration. For one final instant, consciousness stretched across every particle of fog. He felt himself everywhere, inside every gust of wind, every echo of voice, every dying engine. He saw a fisherman in Norway watching the horizon vanish. He saw a child in Galway clutching a stuffed fox, eyes wide as the sky turned white. He saw Vaughn standing on a bridge of glass, smiling as she dissolved into light. Then there was nothing left to see. Only motion. The veil whispered through him. There will always be a driver. 8:50, the rebirth of mist. Far above the dead planet, satellites recorded a final anomaly, a ring of light expanding from the Irish coast, circling the globe in under a minute. When it faded, there was no Dreadmoor, no citadel, no island. Only ocean. And in the center of that ocean floated a single bus, half submerged, headlights still on. Inside, the driver's seat was empty. The wheel turned slowly on its own, keeping rhythm with invisible tides. Fog began to rise from the water again, thin at first, then thickening, curling toward the sky. It shimmered faintly red, as if lit from within by a heartbeat. 9 o'clock, eternal route. The camera of the world pulled back. From orbit, the Earth glowed faint white, a sphere of mist, veined with red roads of light spiraling endlessly across the oceans. In the static hum of the atmosphere, one phrase repeated on every lost frequency. Route restored. driver online. The last human eyes to see it, those of a satellite technician aboard a dead relay, reflected the image of a vast highway stretching across clouds, filled with silent vehicles driving nowhere. The technician whispered, not knowing why, Rule 7. 907, the driver's voice. A single voice emerged from the noise, low, familiar, calm. Sometimes the only way to win, said Ronan Delaney, is to keep driving. The fog folded over the planet one final time, sealing it like a wound. Light out. Silence. End.